The slop train chugs along as we continue our conversations around Universes Beyond and how it's affecting players over next year's lineup. Lack of support in constructed environments, too much commander design, the fault in Wizards' ability to even test for that many sets, all of that is going to come to a head. But in today's video, we're going to take a look at the Distraction Maker's perspective from two designers, taking a look at all the problems with Universes Beyond, talking a little bit about the statistics of everything happening as well, and taking an overall look at how we can maybe approach the next year of Magic the Gathering. Of course, as we watch this video, make sure to also play this video in the background after the fact. Give it time in the limelight, leave a like, leave a comment on their video as well to make sure videos like this are continuing to make the algorithm for the Distraction Makers. Before we get into this video, I want to apologize if y'all are getting any background noise. There's construction going around my place here, so if there's any buzzing from there. But Magic is falling apart. Is Universes Beyond to blame? Likely, for many reasons. It's just a problem with that, and I hope they address it. A lack of long-term data. We are very much in the beginning stage of this. We don't know so many things, right? Like when you break down this whole past week of frustration around the scheduling of next year, breaks in standard, lack of support for Pioneer, Commander versus 60 card constructed players. There's so much to really kind of hone in on, and again, without long-term data, we can't really make too many claims. We just have a bunch of angry people yelling at each other. Specifically, you know, one of the bigger talking points that a lot of people bring up with Universes Beyond is the idea that more people are being brought into the game. We just don't know if they're staying in the game, right? Are the Final Fantasy players then becoming invested in others? You know, you hear thoughts from people like 33 Elk talking about how, you know, these are the people that are very invested. They've been around for Magic for a while, but again, we just don't have the long-term data. Mark Rosewater, I believe, has said that Magic players, the average lifespan is 9 years. That's what the Command Zone video was talking about yesterday anyway, with their thoughts on the whole Universes Beyond stuff. And, you know, at this point, I'm long past Magic, I guess. Like, I should be quitting Magic based on that, because I'm way past 10 years at this point, and that was 9. And I still love the game, but that's because the amount of time I've spent into it. I've grown into it. My young adult life, all throughout into now starting into my mid-adult life here, it has been all dominated by Magic. So I'm more invested in the average person. Are we going to get more people doing that? Again, there's so many questions. I could keep yapping about this in a whole segment here, but let's just hop right into the video. Newly made here as of the recording of this video. Magic is falling apart. Is Universes Beyond to blame?
I do actually think Universes Beyond is part of the problem.
Okay, well then never mind.
Distraction Makers.
Mark Rosewater made a post on his blog. I don't know exactly when, but this was passed to me through, I think, somebody in the Discord. He was commenting on the thing that he calls the Dark Night, which is like a particular moment in Magic player's life cycle. So I'm going to go ahead and just read the quote. We'll discuss afterward. Mark says, there comes a point in many Magic players' life cycle, which I call the Dark Night. Not Dark Knight like Batman. I know there's a lot of Batman potentially flying around in Magic right now. Dark Knight is in like the night, not the night.
Well,
with
Batman's not there yet.
Right. The Dark Knight is coming.
Yeah.
K-N-I-T.
You think this is like the thing of like Mark where he's like blinking for help, and this is like he's saying Dark Knight, and he's
Dark
like,
Knight.
guys,
Confirmed.
Batman's coming.
Unannounced Universes Beyond is back.
Batman, but no, my terrible bait impression there. But I think this message is really important before we get into it, because it talks about essentially how a lot of people can get away from the problems with Universes Beyond by just essentially getting over it. You're going through a dark time, you will get past it. And I think a lot of people are frustrated with that response. It's not an immediate solution. It's telling you that there is light on the other side. You will be able to move through your current situation without it potentially changing at all. And then Universes Beyond might just be that Dark Night. It is not necessarily here to go away. It will not necessarily change on a larger scale based on the information we have right now, but you will be able to move past it. Some people will not. Some people won't be able to. That's fine, I guess. We're going to go through the quote. This was a very big post.
I mean, it's when the game starts changing in a way that fundamentally conflicts with how you perceive it. He then goes on to say, I am a lifelong gamer. I'm a game designer, and I am very particular about how a game functions. I truly believe that Magic is the best game ever made, but to me, Magic is the ultimate strategic game. So when Commander first appeared, it really wasn't my thing. It's a political game, which fundamentally means it's less about playing the cards and more about playing the people. There's lots of ways to play Magic. I didn't need to enjoy them all. Then Commander started to raise in popularity. I had to start designing for it. That was fine. My job, that was fine.
That was fine.
I believe this is the same article where Mark Rosewater actually talks about how he doesn't like Commander, and he's talked about it multiple times. He doesn't like it. There's just so many inherent problems with the format socially. The whole idea about how you need a Rule Zero format, the lack of equivalency in power level, how you can't play to a meta and construct to a status quo, largely one that everyone follows. It's like a vast cavern, not really a line. So many problems that happens with Commander that leads to the positive aspects of it, but also opens itself up in the same way to the negative parts about the format.
My job is to design for all sorts of players that enjoy different things than me. Commander continued to grow and started to become a larger share of the audience. I had spent 30 years constantly improving the game through iteration after iteration. The most dominant format became one defined by all my and my coworkers' mistakes. Magic was slowly changing into something that contradicted my view of what Magic was. It caused a lot of despair for me. What brought me around was the players. I kept getting posts about players excited by Commander, so I dug in and started to learn more about why Commander was so valuable to them. The very thing I disliked about it was the thing most exciting to them. The fact that the game could focus not on how well you knew the cards, but on how well you could interact with the people was a big draw. Yep. There's a real intangible audience that is to you what the Commander players were to me. I had to understand who they were and why Commander was so exciting to them to pull me through my dark night. I hope the fans of Universes Beyond can do the same for you. Okay. So I know that was a lot to get through. It does seem like a lot of Magic players currently are going through what Mark has called the Dark Night. Universes Beyond has given that opportunity a multitude of times now with all of those goalpost shifts, right? It could be that like Universes Beyond at all was the line that you drew and then they crossed that. And then it was Universes Beyond getting a complete set is the line where you draw the line and then they cross that. And continue and continue and continue until you have a bunch of players that are like, well, I really love this game, but like, this Universes Beyond thing was sort of my do not cross line, and they've crossed it multiple times now.
One thing that's worth addressing here is that specifically with Mark Rosewater, a couple of other content creators have brought this up, but I really think, I'm going to echo it here for the few people that maybe do not watch all those content creators or whatever. But it's very important to understand the value of someone like Mark Rosewater communicating to an audience like that at a game development level. This does not exist on this scale for any, if not at all, any games whatsoever, right? To have someone so front facing, so high up in the process, being able to have such a big influencing arm in it, being able to communicate to us with his, commuting podcast and just these blogs that we have, giving us his thoughts. This is a thankless job. It is one that, he communicates his thoughts to and gets so many probably, death threats, probably aggressive comments, mean comments to someone that is doing something that honestly is so largely positive and impactful to the betterment of this game that so many people are then able to take advantage of that and be negative against him. And yes, some of these opinions are worth being critical of. That's the whole idea of what an opinion should be. But like when it becomes like past that line, that's when it becomes a problem. And that's the first thing to note. The second thing is the idea that when it comes to that line for people, Universes Beyond, I think a lot of people are frustrated with the fact that, Mark Rosewater might say one thing, but then they'll tie in what happens with Wizards of the Coast directly to him. Now, he is of Wizards of the Coast. Maybe some blame goes to him, but we have to remember that as with recent revelations, we understand that Hasbro really has a big influence, or likely has a big influence in Wizards of the Coast in their decision making because of the amount of profit generated from them. And so money is going to be the ultimate factor in many of these decisions. There was probably at some point when Universes Beyond wasn't supposed to be standard legal, but with the success of these sets, we now see that shift. And so Mark Rosewater may have said something, but now Wizards of the Coast alongside Hasbro's controlling arm had to kind of change that. And a lot of people can't separate that. A lot of people likely don't want to be optimistic and believe that was a separate opinion. And there was at a time when that was a thing. And so they feel like their promises, the promises that were made to them have been broken. And that was the other kind of line for them. These are two things that we have to be aware of moving forward. I like to be more optimistic on that side. I do believe in the positivity that Mark Rosewater is bringing into this game and how he communicates with us. But I also do recognize his role in it. He does play a role in it. But also, it's like Saffron Olive said in my video talking about, like, you know, when I was reacting to his video talking about the finances of it all, we can't blame people for wanting to just have their jobs. Life's real shit right now. It's in a crazy place to be existing in the Western world, and honestly, at any point in the world right now. And so it's hard to fault people for just doing things to just keep them and their family alive. I don't know, hot take, but you know, yeah, there are things larger than us, and that's a deeper discussion. But when people are backed against a corner and they realize, like, if I don't do what I'm told, if I lose this job, like, you know, you're not that far off from homeless people. I think that's what many people don't understand, right? Like, from being in a good situation to a bad situation, like, you're one decision away. That's all it is. You know, life is so fragile. So I may be taking a little extreme, but like, that's what it is, right? You know, when you take a hobby like this and people's livelihoods, stuff like that matters.
The other part of this too is that, like, so Mark is describing his Dark Knight and basically saying, like, yeah, you know, it was Commander for him, but he came around to it because, you know, it's his job. Where with players, like, it's not your job, right? So like,
right.
I feel like the more times that Magic puts these Dark Knight moments in front of players, the more likely it is that people are going to drop off, right? The more likely it is, and again, it's a binary for players, right? Where you either accept it or you don't, and if you don't accept it at a certain point, you can't keep avoiding it. And I think that's basically the point we are now.
I guess I'm curious as to what the previous sort of Dark Knight pinnacle moments are for players, right? Because prior to, I'd say even Commander becoming popularized is not something that maybe turned too many people away. Maybe it started to, and it really started becoming the thing. But I feel like by the time Commander started becoming really the popular format, it was near the time that we were starting to see like Secret Layers and Universe Beyond and stuff.
Yeah.
There is an interesting lineup of events here, which I think we'll get into a little bit more later, which is the correlation between kind of the decline of how Magic is, the change in how Magic is designed, lining up with Universes Beyond. But let's stick on this point for a minute longer, which is these other moments that could have dropped players off for them being their Dark Knight.
Right.
And like the magnitude of that is much smaller, it feels, at least to me. Look, and I'm biased because I don't really like Universes Beyond, but you
existed through multiple instances, right? Like you were around in the culture of Magic and playing it actively when like they decided to stop doing block format, right?
Sure, but that was like not a huge deal.
But I'm sure there were some people that they were like, oh well, I liked that format, right? And was that their moment? And I just don't know, right? Because even if you drop that, someone's...
Well, what I would argue is like other Dark Knight situations was, you know, pre-Commander, Magic was 1v160 card largely. And so maybe some of that was the reserve list happening. Some of that early on was the reprint sets before the reserve list. So like, you know, Wizards of the Coast is ruining this. And then they went about their Dark Knight by creating the reserve list to create security in people's purchases of Magic. And then the other ones might have been standard bans, format creations, and just decks being taken out from under them, bad situations in standard. Like the Dark Knight situations were likely far more spread out. But now in the information age, as things move so much more quickly, as we receive information quickly, as we solve formats quicker, as we get product quicker, we will get more Dark Knights faster. And so this was an interesting point that actually the Command Zone brought up, where, you know, the average life cycle of a Magic player is like 9 years. If you only had, you know, let's say 4 sets a year times 9, if you had 36 sets come out over the 9 years, and then now you have 36 sets within like 4 or 5 years, then, you know, is that going to be a life cycle by product where people get fatigued by the amount of product that they're dealing with, and then therefore the life cycle of a Magic player is actually drastically shrunk? We don't know. We don't know if Magic players are still going to be around for 9 years, right? We are at the beginning of this long-term study right now, and it's so hard to do things the scientific method and observe data over time, because you then feel like as things happen, like trends change, things change, you feel like the data becomes irrelevant. It's so hard to conduct information like this, but it's worth bringing that up and acknowledging.
Favorite format, is that like a big enough shift for them to be like, well, I can't play anymore, or I don't want to play anymore.
It probably, I mean, it depends on how impactful that format is, right? Like we've seen the decline of standard, and like players are dropping off because like what else are they going to play? They could go play modern, I guess, but like now modern is sort of getting interfered with these commander cards and things. I think that like it's interesting, right? So if we look at these moments that I can think of, and for context, I was a competitive standard player since, gosh, I think 2003 up through pretty heavily through probably 2016 or so. And then kind of sporadically after that. But yeah, I mean, I played through basically the golden age of standard, which would have been 2006 through 2016. And it's the moments that would have happened then were like pretty small in my mind, especially in that golden age, right? Like we had affinity, which, and again, that's not a like fundamental game changing thing.
Yeah, that's just like a shitty meta.
Yeah, it's a bad format. That could be like, oh, I hate this meta. But then you come back because you're like, well, the meta changed. Yeah. But as Mark said in his post, the format now is defined by all of Magic's mistakes, right? Or at least what they are perceiving as design mistakes. I think players don't necessarily see it that way. They're like, oh, these are cool, powerful, awesome cards that I want to play with.
Right.
But some of them, yeah. Design wise, they're like, well, the way that we understood how to make the best Magic, those cards don't fit into it.
Right.
So that's not under their control anymore, right? It's an internal format. All the cards are available. I think with the commander side of things, though, with Mark, his Dark Knight moment came when he had to start designing for Commander, right? And that's a very clear, precise moment for him where his job changed. Yeah. And I think that's such a clear-cut moment that I think it's much more acute in its severity, right? It's like, okay, it's this exact moment that now you are being asked to design for a format of this game that you...
And you can think of specific things like more things make treasures, more things draw more cards, or just have ETBs. Like things don't really have downsides like that anymore. Like the queen problem that is talked about on this channel a lot, the Distraction Makers channel. The levers that change restrictions into what is a queen and what is not are more few and far in between, right? Like cards just have better effects and they just cost more or something, or they still have a cost restriction within a certain vacuum and it's easy to meet that restriction, but that's the balancing factor. For example, a card might cost 2 mana versus 4 like Carnage, but you just have to discard it and cast it out of your graveyard, which arguably is an immensely better effect anyway. Like you always want to discard it just to get something leaving your graveyard, a card being cast. Like there's so many things like able to be triggered there. So there's a lot of effects now that aren't really that downside. And then B, you have, in my specific example, cards that say each opponent, right? So now we no longer are saying target player, we are saying each opponent. In some cases, that is one of the levers that we can pull. We can say target player as a balancing factor, but think of Fractured Sanity and Tosh the City's Laughter, cards that get around hexproof effects, target effects that do come up, right? Like Leyline of Sanctities, Unsettled Mariners, like things that don't target do actually have a good effect, like do provide a lot of value. The cycling of Fractured Sanity in a commander pod is 2 mana, draw 1, and mill a total of 12 cards, right? Like it's really powerful to be able to do that. That is 12 different potential targets for reanimation, 12 different triggers of a certain thing that you might have on your battlefield. Like these are all commander designs. And now we've even had to dial them back where you see a lot of powerful designs where whenever a creature gets destroyed, you create a treasure token, but then you only have that happen once per turn because they don't want to like break it. And that's where you kind of dial things back because you've taken things too far and you realize, okay, what's good, what's not. You've created meaningful restrictions. And now people think about, okay, that's once per turn. I can do it once on my turn, then my opponent, then whatever. And so people get more creative and you create a larger area, but then you're still kind of creating for commander. Like these are interesting designs that may be powerful in a 1v1 sense, but they're still designed with commander in mind so that they don't break that format while still having potentially a meaningful effect in 1v1 60 card. You're still designing for commander.
you don't really agree with.
And on top of that, I think behind the scenes, right, it seemed like there was a massive shift internally that Mark has also referenced, in that like it probably wasn't just, oh, you have to design for Commander, but he can also see the pipeline in the future, and he's seeing like not only is Commander something you have to design for now, but you're going to be seeing into the future here. There's Universes Beyond coming up. There's this is where we're taking the game.
He could even
in
see
the future.
He could see years down the road.
Whereas players, it's a slow burn, right?
Exactly.
Where you're seeing Commander grow, and you're like, okay, that's fine. Okay, maybe I'll play a Commander game with my friends every now and then, even though it's not my favorite. That's fine. Oh, they're doing secret layers now. Okay, well, they said they're not going to do it like this, so okay, I'm going to have to trust that. But meanwhile, Wizards knows where it's going.
Right. Yeah. Mark can see the writing on the wall, and he knows what's the future. And it's basically get on board with the fact that Commander is now the most popular format of Magic, or find a new job, basically, because this is going to be your job now. Yep. And like, I know Mark has said things like he wants to ensure that Magic is going to outlive him. Like that has been a goal of his almost his entire career. And so I'm sure that was a very difficult thing for him to make a shift for, especially if he fundamentally disagrees with that being the type of game that Magic is. So it's commendable for him to notice that, okay, well, this is where the players want to take Magic, so that's where Magic's going to go.
And I think that, I mean, look, it's funny because I think
commendable. I don't know.
I think it's funny because we got a little shit recently in a video where we started it by basically saying that, you know, we love Mark Rosewater, and a lot of people are like, oh, boo, Marky, whatever. And like, no, I sincerely, people gotta get off his ass on this, because like the fact that he had a job shift like that where he's like, I don't love this,
but I love Magic more.
Yeah, and I want to be here. Leave is huge, and like you want someone like that in your corner if possible.
I think that
because I think they're going to come at it with the knowledge of what they had prior, right? As opposed to like if he left and they had to get someone else that came in that didn't have the amount of knowledge and know-how that he had,
then it's like it's going to fail potentially. The likelihood of Magic just becoming a non-factor anymore and actually failing becomes much higher if Mark walks away.
And Mark's a very skilled designer. I think that people don't give him enough credit because you don't see it, right? Design is such a hard skill for people to grasp because it's intangible.
It's 99% invisible.
Yeah. But
on purpose.
But you can feel it. And any set that Mark was a part of, not counting Urza's Saga, which he's talked about, but he's very good at his job, and people got to give him more credit.
And he also is much more outspoken and shares so much of his insight with the community at large that he's an invaluable resource. It's crazy.
100%.
So sure, you guys can get mad at him being a corporate shill if you want. That he can be a corporate shill and also be one of the best game designers ever. Like that, those two things can be true.
Mutually.
Anyway, enough glazing, Mark. So okay, so let's come back around to the Universes Beyond. Is it actually to blame in this situation? Because I do think that there's a lot of different things going on all at once, and Universes Beyond has become the I guess the most visible thing of change in Magic that players are pointing to as like this is indicative of the problems that are happening with Magic right now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you should get into this. You had this point, but
sure.
I mean, I feel like you had a pretty good point that showed that it's not just Universes Beyond.
So first, what I will say is that I do actually think Universes Beyond is part of the problem.
Okay, well then never mind.
But what I'll say is that what seems to be going on is that the design quality control, let's say, is much looser for Universes Beyond sets. In terms of set quality that players have accepted, right? That players have seen as the best set quality. They have been Universes Beyond sets, the best, like Final Fantasy, right? Best selling Magic set of all time. Lord of the Rings before that. Also, the lowest lows have been Universes Beyond.
Well, now officially, I think Assassin's Creed was like a silent death.
Oh, it was,
that came and went.
So what I would argue here, and I'm curious to hear what they mentioned here, but I would argue the lowest low was Assassin's Creed, because that was a set that was so forgotten. No one cares about. The marketing was so bad, and Spider-Man was set to be something like that. Again, Assassin's Creed, largely forgotten, big failure. I would argue actually The Universes Beyond's right now, the sets right now, like Final Fantasy, actually was successful and actually had relatively high quality control, even with something like Vivi, but were a symptom of a decision made down the line in the middle of design of these cards of 3-year standard. There are examples of multiple cards that should not have been interacting with each other and should have rotated out long before, but now will have either extended rotation or have already been rotated out and are too late. They should have been rotated out long ago because, again, of this 3-year standard decision. And so alongside that, that's your first point. A lot of these cards, again, should not have been interacting with each other in a vacuum, are perfectly fine and had relatively enough breathing room to be able to be safe in the current standard environment. Now, that changes with the decision about the amount of sets that come out each year. Each individual set is probably fine by itself, but the quality control is in compared to the other products coming out. And now with a drastic increase in the amount of products coming out, the quality control overall is lower because you don't have the time for it, like, to properly test each set and their interactions. Or you may do so, you may have the time to test, but the level of quality of that testing decreases because, again, you just don't have the time to test all the interaction. Ultimately, something slips through because there is a larger sample size and a larger margin of error available because of the amount of sets increased, right? It is easier to test for 4 sets per year than it is to test for 6 to 7 sets per year. That just makes more sense. Like, sets need to be out in the printer more. We are printing more secret layers. Like, mistakes come through, right? Cards that aren't spelt properly come through. Cards that aren't templated properly come through. Cards that have the wrong framing come through. These are all examples of things that have happened, by the way. All examples of things that have happened, by the way, this year. And so all of these slip through as an overall quality control, whether it be set by set, that's a different discussion. But I would argue it's a symptom of the larger problem, not that individual Universes Beyond sets necessarily have bad quality control. Now, we see that kind of change with Spider-Man. That's a different story of a set that was likely supposed to be based on anecdotal evidence. I don't think it's been said outright somewhere. Maybe it has. Someone let me know down below. But it was supposed to be an Assassin's Creed-like set, but because of the popularity of it, they had to chunk in a bunch of junk in there and then force a pick 2 draft to even make it viable, which has been a large flop. Like, Spider-Man is going to be a flop set. Doesn't mean that Marvel's going to be a flop set, but Spider-Man is a flop set. So.
And people just didn't really talk about it. People have to talk about Spider-Man.
Right.
Because I don't think people had as high of hopes with Assassin's Creed. But following Final Fantasy and following Lord of the Rings and Marvel being the IP and the scope that it is, I think a lot of people thought this is going to be huge. So when Spider-Man was the set and it was fairly disappointing to a lot of people, I think that, yeah, it was, I don't know, it was not hyped up.
I do think, again, coming back to the Universes Beyond potentially being the problem here, it's at least contributing to the problem, is that the quality control of design seems looser, right? It's that when we look at Spider-Man as a set, I don't think a Universes Within set would have been planned to be a small set and then be expanded, right? We did get some of this, though, with the big score, right, with Thunder Junction, is that, like, Thunder Junction was supposed to be set, and then they're going to do a small set with the big score, and that just got put into Thunder Junction. And that was because the Aftermath set did so bad, and those were all in-universe sets. So the in-universe sets pointed to, okay, let's make this change with Spider-Man. However, one of the biggest issues with Spider-Man is also the arena mishap with being able to secure the digital rights to the thing, and that's an entire Universes Beyond only problem, right? But I will also say that,
which I've said in previous videos is very relevant to know, because not only are we designing 6 to 7 sets per year, but we're actually kind of softly developing 9 to 10 sets per year, depending on how many through the Omen patch sets we have. Maybe it's 8, maybe it's 9, maybe it's 10, but in the sense that we're designing and using money to get artwork for completely different cards, right? Naming them differently, creating different names for their keywords, because yes, web slinging is not web slinging on through the Omen plots, it's NWeb, ENWEB, right? Like, So it's not necessarily that the effects are different, so you don't need to change that, but you do need to change the actual name of the card, the ability on the card, how it gets indexed everywhere on the Gatherer, and for the people on Scryfall, that's a different organization, and other websites like Archidec, Moxfield, whatever. And you're also having to, again, make more art. All of this is increased cost because you couldn't secure the proper contracting. And again, you are designing more cards. You are having to design a card twice, right? Maybe I'll be generous and say you will have to design a card 1.5 times. That is an increased load and an effort and an amount of time that can just go into other things. Just saying.
It does, for whatever reason, seem like the Universes Beyond sets have a much wider gamut of like design quality, right? Is that, again, we've gotten some of the highest highs with Final Fantasy, and we've gotten some of the lowest lows, especially Final Fantasy Limited. Limited was apparently a lot of fun and well designed. But then we've had these, like literally the lowest low being Spider-Man sent in decades. Like we're set potentially since like the 90s. The other thing I'll say is that, and as we look into, as we go into 2026 with, what is it? Four of the seven sets coming out next year as being Universes Beyond. I think part of the thing that's so scary, I mean, even for me as a player, going, okay, are these going to be Spider-Mans or are they going to be Final Fantasies? And when you look at the properties that are wrapped up in this, you kind of go, yeah, I don't know.
Right.
Well, one interesting thing that the command zone was talking about is, again, we only have short-term data, but is it that there's so many different factors, right? Like, is it a hunger for this set? So for example, for something like Spider-Man, we're always getting new Spider-Man content, new Marvel movies, new comics. Like, there is an endless amount of Spider-Man to be consumed. But for something like Final Fantasy, this is the greatest induction of Final Fantasy artwork and adjacent material to consume in the last, 15 years or something like that, right? Like, the amount of Final Fantasy artwork, cards, things that add to the lore or whatever, right? Like, even if it's the same lore, it just tells the story in a similar way. Like, maybe that's more accessible to some people. Like, this is the largest dump of materials for Final Fantasy. So obviously the Final Fantasy people are going to be excited to get their favorite Final Fantasy games, 1 through 6 and everything, like, reimagined in this type of artwork is so insane in such a big way. And then Final Fantasy in many ways is a game very analogous to Magic the Gathering, similar to how Warhammer is with its tactical gameplay style. Final Fantasy, being a digital game that is tactical in that way, does that lean and kind of add to the value of those players coming into Magic? Is it a better jumping off point, whereas something like Marvel or Spider-Man is comic book readers? It's not necessarily a tactical game, and even the Spider-Man games aren't necessarily what you would think of as a tactical turn-based game or something like that. It's an open world, free roam, action adventure type of game. That's not necessarily what Magic the Gathering is. So is that audience being translated over properly into this setting? And so again, we don't have the largest sample size with, we had Commander product before, the Fallout series, Doctor Who, as I mentioned, Warhammer 40K. But now as we get into it from a set perspective, how does that change when it comes to Avatar? Now, Avatar doesn't really have a game series to it that's necessarily tactical, but this is going to be a great induction of artwork and materials that we haven't had necessarily before. Now, we are going to get the copy JPEG images of cards. We already see that with stuff like Force Negation and everything, with Aang taking away the bending of Firelord. But will that be enough excitement to bring people in? Right. And so we have to see what these trends are with certain sets, whether it be IP based, whether it be certain factors in that fandom. Does it relate to games and how people are consuming that content? Is the gaming content going to do better than the overall pop culture content? Would Star Wars actually not do as good? I would actually highly doubt. I think a Star Wars Magic the Gathering set would absolutely bang. I think the size of the fandom does matter. But again, I could be wrong. We thought about that with Marvel, so we'll have to see with Marvel superheroes. But all of these things are really interesting things to think about that I'm really happy the Command Zone brought up in their episode earlier this week.
I don't know.
I mean, especially if you're not a fan of the property, then you have no idea like what to what to think, I guess.
Yeah.
When it comes to like quality control, I don't know if it's necessarily Universes Beyond or not. Now, if they have two separate teams working on this, then
Right. Yeah,
possibly.
it's hard to know.
And but now it wouldn't make sense to have two separate teams working on these things, right? Unless
There's so many sets that you're going to have all the teams working on Universes Beyond stuff.
Yeah,
basically.
but now with so many sets, they probably do have to have some sort of an A team, B team that are sort of leapfrogging over each other with every set that they design. So they might actually have a Universe Beyond team and then another team, and that's just hopping into the next, franchise or whatever, or they mix it up every set or something. But I feel like it's so. I don't know if it's necessarily about like. I definitely think it's a quality control thing, but what I'm feeling like is happening with Spider-Man, and I don't know if this happened with Assassin's Creed. I don't know why that flopped, if it was like the IP just didn't resonate. I honestly...
The set also was just not very good.
Yeah, I don't hear anything about it.
Yeah, it went quietly, where Spider-Man seems to be a big inflection point where people are going like, what is going on? This is bad. Like, this is not a good set. And Assassin's Creed was not really either, and
I think the biggest thing that I'm feeling, the difference between Final Fantasy and Spider-Man here is that Final Fantasy, yes, had some of those high highs, but Spider-Man is almost playing it too safe, which is also not fun.
I mean, it's also just like when you look at the IP, it's like it's a bunch of Spider-Mans, right? Like there's so many Spider-Men in the set. It's weird, right? Well,
that's one of the things that Saffron Olive brought up, where it's hard to differentiate that for a casual player that might not even be that invested in Spider-Man, where when it comes to different IPs like the Marvel superheroes one, you are going to have a Doctor Strange versus a Hulk versus a Thor. You're not going to have Thor India, Thor Alaska, Thor Canada. Like, you're not going to have that, whereas you had that type of feel for Spider-Man. You had different multiversal Spider-Man, you have different country Spider-Man. And so when it's really revolving around one character, it's hard to bring that out completely into a whole set alongside his whole villain lineup.
Where Final Fantasy has like the IP to back up a wide breadth of different types of designs. How many different ways can you reinvent Spider-Man? Like, I don't know. That could be part of the constraints that are happening here. And then that again is a Universes Beyond problem.
Yeah,
I think it's potentially because of the amount of Spider-Man in the set, I guess, that it's a problem. But it wouldn't make sense as to why like pretty much every mechanic in that whole set is like a workhorse mechanic, right? Is pretty standard. It's pretty safe.
So let's look at the flip side of this problem, which is that we've got Universes Beyond, but there's another force that's being put on the design of Magic now. And it's that you're designing for a non-rotating format that is not like, it's built on the systems of Magic, but it was not like Magic was not initially designed to account for having 4 players at the table that all have 40 life each. And there's a lot of design pressure being put there.
I saw this specifically in a unique case that I want to bring up with the One Piece TCG. I was a part of the initial movement to largely popularize the 4 Emperors variant, and I will shout out the oh my god, I'm forgetting the name of these people. I'm so bad for this. I'm not for remembering them, but there is a channel out there that put out a large like command zone type gameplay video of 4 Emperors, and so from that we created a Discord. I got them involved. I made the Discord, but I got them involved and tried to get them, kind of involved in terms of curating people and everything, and creating a One Piece TCG commander style format. It was really exciting, a lot of powerful effects, but we actively played and tried to kind of get it going. Unfortunately, a lot of the hype kind of died down for it. I got really busy. I wasn't a fan of where One Piece kind of went. And so ultimately I ended up like letting it go. I was like, I don't want to play the One Piece TCG anymore. Feel free to take it over, all that stuff. So I'm hoping that that is thriving. I think they posted more gameplay videos of it, but that's a game specifically that was designed for 1v1. It doesn't have the openings for multiplayer. Now, the Gundam TCG out of Bandai is built for multiplayer, and even Riftbound TCG is coming out with multiplayer out the gate as well. So these are going to be games that see the value in what Commander is doing and is building their systems around it, whereas One Piece didn't have that. You had to adapt certain abilities and how you interpreted certain rules, and so that was very tough for some people. It made certain effects like really powerful, likely like bannable and everything, like putting them on like community led lists and everything. This was a community format that I was like kind of working on helping to curate and everything, and so it was very hard to make that work. And I'm hoping right now that community and those content creators are able to kind of succeed with that. I hope that is going well for them. I wish nothing but the best for them. It's just not in my purview right now because I am really enjoying and loving Magic right now and how much I'm playing it. But just going to show you like the challenges of when a game is designed for single player, when it's so rigid in its rule systems, it's hard for it to adapt. At least with Magic, it's so unique because of how you can interact with people and how, you know, the stack, the layers, like Magic is so comprehensive that it allows for things like this to, you know, come in, like tiny leaders, $30 vintage, all that type of stuff. Momir Vig even, right? Like Magic is comprehensive and allows for silly things like this, which only adds to it. It's not a flaw. It is part of the package.
And also we're seeing those card designs creeping into sets that are supposed to be for 20 life 1v1 Magic. Yeah. Which of those two problems do we see as like the bigger issue, I guess, in terms of its negative impact on the game at large?
And I think that this is tough because I think when a lot of people have talked about the impact of Universes Beyond, a lot of it is about their taste and their preferences, where they're saying like, well, I don't want to play in New York City. You don't want to play with City Pit.
By the way, by the time you're watching this, you already know that TMNT has been confirmed. The New York Comic Con panel is probably already finished by the time this video is going to go live. But as the recording of this video, we got spoilers of like a truck pulling up to New York Comic Con that had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the side with Magic the Gathering logo. So pretty much like as of Wednesday this week, we had it confirmed that it was TMNT. And so we're going back to New York. Surprise, surprise. The plane of New York is ever present. As with this world, all superhero movies are always about, you know, in New York, LA, whatever. The only cities that exist in North America, I guess.
Right. Or Rent is Due.
Or
is the
Cup
one.
of Noodles is the Final Fantasy one.
I think the bigger issue is that the set is like non-functional in a draft environment. Right. There's a bunch of like they wouldn't ever make a set that just had a bunch of like the same type of like legend creature, right? And that's what they've done with all the Spider-Man, right? Because when we look at the through the Owen paths or whatever it is, you can see that like the flavor and mechanics there is a little off too. Like there's a skewing towards certain color pairings because that's what lines up with Spider-Man better than other color pairings, and like you end up with all kinds of just weird problems, I guess. And that's all Universes Beyond. Well, I shouldn't say it's all. The number of legendary creatures is a commander
is also
influence.
a problem. Yeah, which I definitely think that's an issue, and I'm wondering how bad that's going to get moving forward. Because you can't have the not exciting characters in a set.
Yeah, it's basically that like every Universes Beyond set is going to be full of legendaries. It's going to have sagas and it's going to have flip cards. And that's what we're seeing so far. Every Universes Beyond set.
But yeah, I think it's like personally, I don't like playing real world stuff that's too close to real modern world.
Sure. Yeah, I don't like it either.
But like that, I think personally is less impactful than whether the set functions or the game is fun.
There's this great little TikTok comedy series by this guy with like long hair. He's kind of bald and he's got glasses, but he does this. Someone let me know in the comment section if you know what I'm talking about and link it down below. But it's like this guy doing like pack openings for TCGs, but it's like the packs are called Divorced Dad, and he opens up the pack of Divorced Dad, and it's like the cards are like alimony, something about like something to do with beer, like the food that you eat, losing the house or something like that. And like absolutely hilarious, absolutely freaking hilarious. And that's kind of where we're approaching. We're like, that's actually going to be like a real thing with like stuff like Rent is Due, but just thought it was really funny. If anyone can link it down below and tag me in it, shout out to you. I'm going to pin your comment. I'm going to pin the first person that brings it up if you're this far in the video. That's Spider-Man could have been the most fun set, and then I think people would have given it some grace with the fact that you play in New York City. Like, I don't think people would have cared if it felt really cool to go and play these cards.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think that if the set was like a really good set and people loved it as much as like the Final Fantasy set and it just happened to be Spider-Man, I don't think that would be nearly as big of a problem.
Yeah. And so it sucks because I think there are some people that are like, no, I hate it. I don't like this. I really don't want to participate in this. And that's fine. But that people do have to kind of accept that, like, that is your personal tastes and preferences. And not everyone's going to feel that way. Now, Magic's only going to care if their survey data shows that actually 80% of players feel that way. And they stopped playing the game because of that.
Right. So,
but you have to remember some of this is also sampling issues. The problem is that when it comes to the vocal minority online on Twitter, like, y'all have to, like, remember this from a statistical sampling perspective, right? The enfranchised player is going to be the one commenting on videos like this and on Twitter, especially this far in the video, even listening to all of this. They're going to be the people that are more likely to respond. They're going to have the stronger opinion. The vast majority of players right now are commander players and they're casuals. They're not going to be necessarily participating in these samples. So there is going to be a bias to the audience that you're putting this out to. It's really hard to get a true data argument for the majority of Magic players just based on how they engage with the game. So it's hard to take this then sample of putting out a poll out there and having Magic players be like, oh, I hate Universes Beyond, when maybe the majority of Magic players may actually like Universes Beyond, or it might be, as statistics lead you to believe, actually just be a mean distribution, closer to being like 50-50. More people are like in the middle, like they like it, half the other half people don't. It may not be a majority. It's really hard to sample for this. So you have to take information like this with a grain of salt. And this comes with the whole concept of literacy and being able to break down the information that comes at you every day. But I just thought it was important to bring up. Like, you really do have to take some of these polls that you see with a grain of salt, because it has a real bias, especially if that poll is only available on a certain platform and or through a certain avenue.
So not to just pile on the doomerism here.
That's what this video is.
It's kind of what this video is. So if we're ready to give people another Dark Knight moment, let's talk about how Spider-Man currently is looking, because I think the biggest determining factor here is going to be, it's if the worst performing Universes Beyond set is still performing better than the best in-universe set. That's when we're like, we have crossed.
And part of this is going to be like, this is the thing, they can paint this narrative just based off of purchasing. You have to remember that the pre-orders for the collector booster for Spider-Man went for $1,000. They've crashed down to $650, $500, but those purchases were made. Those are all purchases that were sold. Wizards of the Coast got that money. They can use that to argue that Spider-Man maybe, we don't know the numbers, could have made more than Edge of Eternities. It could be a thing. So you also have to take that type of data and understand the whole context. You cannot just take data at face value. A lot of people right now take data at face value. You know what? I'll tell you what, I will completely admit to, you know what? Some of the slop content I make is partly due to that. I hope some of y'all in the comments and watching this do take that information that I'm giving you, or maybe trying to clickbait you with, and apply a little bit of critical thinking to it. And a lot of you do. I see it in the comment section. Some of you don't. And so you have to take information like that. When Wizards of the Coast in the Hasbro earnings call next year potentially says Spider-Man did better than Edge of Eternities, hold on. There are some factors to that. But regardless, based on how the internet and information works right now, and how much more we will listen to negative comments and rage baiting, it's going to have a big impact if that is the truth, and if Wizards of the Coast is able to spin it that way, or Hasbro is able to spin it that way.
Into an entire new generation of Magic, and we're looking at like, okay, doing an in-universe set at that point is a liability. Yeah. It literally is saying we are just choosing to make less money.
Now, this does depend somewhat on what their profit margins look like with licensing fees and having to work with companies. And so it's possible
they're offsetting that cost on the
Universe
consumer.
Beyond is going to do better, but is a much more costly thing.
The cost could be higher.
Sure. Art costs more as well. Costs twice as much. So that's also something to consider.
Sure. And that's just because they pay artists a higher rate for Universes Beyond.
Yeah.
And that's to make up for the fact that they don't get artist proofs and a bunch of the other
resell
goodies.
It.
And,
You can't do original stuff. So there's costs with Universes Beyond, but we don't know exactly what that profit margin is.
Sure. So currently, we just looked up collector boosters to compare apples to apples. So currently, Spider-Man collector boosters seem to have bottomed out at about $500 for a
might go lower.
Collector booster display box. And then if we look at Dragonstorm or Tarkir Dragonstorm, those were at what, 300?
350.
350.
And we also checked Edge of Eternities because we're not sure yet which performed better, and Edge of Eternities is also
good. I'm happy they brought that up because a lot of people those are two sets that a lot of people had like a lot of positivity for. Dragonstorm was a great set. Edge of Eternities was a great set in my opinion. Like again, from a 1v1 60 card perspective, so many powerful cards came out of a set that had, you know, Evoke Light or a evolved version of Evoke. Of course is going to be powerful if you take powerful effects and give them reduced costs. Yeah. So that led to it, but so many playable cards out of that.
So there is still a $150 gap, which is pretty substantial. And if we're taking all of our current anecdotal evidence that we have on Spider-Man's performance, it seems like it didn't do well amongst players.
And franchise players seem to be very outspoken about not that this set is really bad, but the problem is if that's a vocal minority, and that if
there you go, I'm happy. There you go. See, distraction makers, they're on it. They're on that wavelength. They're on that. You gotta. These are things you gotta consider. This is why I love these two. That's why I love these two. They're smart people. They're smart people.
Majority of players are just looking at this as like, oh, cool, Spider-Man. I like Spider-Man. I'll buy some Spider-Man cards. That's the newest thing. Or collectors, scalpers, anything in that territory have brought this set, are buying the set to resell or whatever, depending upon how well that works.
I mean, there's larger chase cards in Spider-Man 2 than in Edge of Eternities, and in not playable game component chase cards, like you have the Shocklands in Edge of Eternities, but you don't have a $32,000 Soulstone card in Edge of Eternities. So.
Yeah. I didn't realize that card was worth that much money.
Yeah,
so that literally might be propping up the collector booster prices at this point until all the serialized Soulstones are pulled. Then maybe it.
Do you think they just added that last minute because they're like, we don't think this is going to do well?
I think that they planned it the whole time. Yeah. Let's be real. I think that's just part of it.
Imagine cashing that back, $32,000 for a Magic card. Jeez Louise, God, that's some debt repayment right there. I am about like, we live in a debt economy. Let me tell you, oof. That would handle some debt. That would help handle some debt.
To be a full set the whole time.
I don't think. Yeah, maybe. I was thinking about that because I was like, well, that changes the rarity pull on the Soulstone. So if it was a smaller set, you're more likely to pull it. And no, the boosters are smaller. Never mind.
Are they?
Yeah, they were. They had like 7 cards instead of 14 or something.
Okay.
It's terrible. Okay, so let's leave people with just a little bit of hope.
Oh.
Because there's a couple things I can think of that might
at the end of the tunnel
sort of be hopeful here. Is that 2026, I think, is going to be a keystone year for where we go.
Is this hopeful for people in that they want to see things crash so bad that it's going to turn in their favor?
That's where we're at.
Man,
right. And what I will say, that it literally is where we're at, is that Universes Beyond needs to start performing poorly. And there's a couple of reasons why that might happen, right? It's that the design quality is not good enough that players start to reject this. The fact that more content creators and people are being outspoken about this quality problem, and also just Universes Beyond generally being poor. And the other part is that the Hobbit set is coming out this year, and that's our first sort of like return to a Universes Beyond set. And if the Hobbit set does not perform as well as the Lord of the Rings set, I think they might start to understand that they're going to get diminishing returns from Universes Beyond.
Also, another thing to mention from the franchise players that are going to be vocal and think about it, a big topic that I talked about in a video earlier this week is the idea of reprints. You can reprint the One Ring in the Hobbit. It wasn't called the One Ring at the time. Like, it doesn't matter. It is still the One Ring. It is still Sauron's freaking ring. I don't care about your stupid semantics. Okay, it's still the One Ring. Okay, in that story, it doesn't matter what they call it. It is still that. They can reprint the One Ring. Orcish Bowmasters, like big cards that came out of that set, they can reprint in there. There's a possibility they can reprint it in there. Will they do that? Is there an avenue to reprint cards in Universes Beyond that don't have an actual reprint plan down the line? And will they actually have a meaningful effect on the value of these cards? Will we get them flooded into the market? Just like how the One Ring was available in that like scene box promo where like the One Ring was worth like $40, but the scene box promo was like 35. So you could just buy those up and buy One Rings at a discount. Oh my God, I wish I bought 4 of those, because Lord knows at the time I thought I only needed 1 for Legacy. Maybe I could use some for Modern, I thought I only needed 1 for Commander. but Lord knows I could have used some for modern. Now I'm regretting it because, of course, I didn't, hindsight 2020, I didn't know I was going to be getting into Legacy. I would love a playset of the rings for playing Painter or a variant of Painter and everything. So, oh well, it's just musings.
And it's going to be difficult for them to continue to print and return to different IPs. And also that, like, I don't know how many times you can go back to that well. Right now, if you're teaming up with a property that is continuing to make new content, maybe that's better, maybe that's okay. Right. But Magic has always been able to reinvent its own worlds so that they can make new content on the same plane. Right, Mirrodin the first time we're there, Mirrodin the second time we're there. Those are different things that they're doing different things with. But if you're continuing to pull from the same well over and over and over again of the same intellectual property that is not continuing to change, how many times can you make the One Ring and name it something different? How many times can you make Spider-Man and name it something different? How many times can you make Bilbo and create a different card out of Bilbo, right? I think there's diminishing returns there.
I think you're right. And I guess we'll have to see. If you enjoyed listening to us talk about Universe Beyond and why it may or may not have ruined your favorite game ever, please feel free to give us a like and a subscribe, maybe a comment down below.
If you want to continue the conversation, you can join our Discord. The link is in the description.
I'm reliking. Okay. All right. I'm commenting down below. Happy that y'all also addressed addressed. What am I missing here? 2Ds? Okay. Addressed the idea of bias in the community that they might sample data from, especially the enfranchised that may be the vocal minority. It is an important part of the statistical analysis of all of this when we make conclusions down the line about UB. All important. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section down below of this video. As I'm going to mention in the intro as well, videos like this, because you watched it with me doesn't mean it doesn't deserve its time in the algorithm. Go and watch this video or leave it running in the background in a different tab. Leave a like on it, comment on it as well. You don't need to watch it again, but some of you may be watching this on your phone or working from home or whatever passively. Like, just open up a tab, let it run, show YouTube that people are watching it. And excuse me, just let it kind of work from there. And then this video can get just as much popular, right? Because I kind of reacting to it doesn't do its justice. But regardless, Distraction Maker is making great videos as always. I don't want to keep yapping for too long. I put out my thoughts there as we went along. But for now, hopefully Universes Beyond, it's going to be probably a little bit worse before it gets better, but hopefully we can find a better future, maybe even come 2027. Maybe we just got to get through the dark night that is 2026.